pointing out facts. If I point a finger, that's point of attack. Good point, who's next? Flag on the plate, now I'm causing them death. We bet on ourselves, so what you expect? A die-hard fan, never live with regret. Yes, sir. Go to my neck. Burgundy flex. Who wants the smoke? We bringing it home. Beat like gas. Look how we step. Who we got next? Step on the right, step on the left. Who do we rep? Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Right side. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Left side. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? Right in the middle. Commanders. Where's my soldiers? High off the way that this sound, they turn up as soon as they feet hit the ground. I am not playing around. I hit them, I bet that they feeling me now.
Welcome, one and all across the nation and around the world. I welcome you all to episode 19 of the Commanders Gridiron Report. And I'm so glad this season is over. So glad that this season is over. And you're going to see that feeling of greatness within that throughout this episode. There's some positivity to this. We do have some things to look back on for this season. And, we got our wish today. And we're going to cover that all right now on this production brought to you by
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Absolutely. Also, shout out to A7BN Sports and Team MBS Media, who also carry the show. We are in episode 19. It has been one hellacious season for this Commanders team, and I'm definitely glad myself that it's over. All of you fans out there that survived this season, a team that over 32 years of not being in a Super Bowl has probably got the highest rate in cardiac arrest in this team in the fan base of the Washington now Commanders, formerly the Redskins. I'm going to say it, the Redskins. Why? Because I want to. And the owner says it in a press conference like 37 times. I can say it a few times here on my show as we close out this season. A season that was absolutely terrible. Sick Diggy's in the house and says, what in the all types of burgundy and gold hell? Well, we've got a hellacious season to cover, my man. And we'll get back to the comments here in a second. But after we get to the 1st and 10.
They are the Washington Commanders. New name, new marks, new uniform.
Soldiers, are we ready for Operation Burgundy Flag?
Normally, I would have some type of awesome-looking graphic that would follow that transition, but my birthday was yesterday, and I've been celebrating that. If you didn't see the episode last night, you can go back to the YouTube channel and watch it. For those of you watching right now on Facebook, you can go back to the YouTube channel and watch it if you want to see it again. Have some fun with you guys here in the comments, but tonight, we have to talk about the Commanders as they lose their 8th straight game this season to the Arlington Desperados. That's the nickname that has definitely been dubbed for the Dallas Cowboys. Have to give a shout out to the Quimbies over at Legacy Maker Sports Network for coming up with that one. I did steal it, but I gave you your props afterwards. Yes, the Arlington Desperados, the Dallas Cowboys come into FedEx Field and hand the Commanders their 8th straight loss of this season. Now, for me, I'm going to be honest. Going into yesterday, birthday, okay? My wish on my day of birth was that they actually lost yesterday. I was actually hoping so we get the 2nd overall pick in this NFL draft, and it came into fruition as they have draft capital now. They can either trade that draft pick or they can use it to take one of these highly touted college caliber athletes that are coming out of here, and NFL caliber, I should say, NFL caliber athletes coming out of college. Now, with this game that we saw yesterday, it was definitely a game where I think Dak Prescott comes into town and he wanted to, I guess, right the wrongs from last season. Because last season, the Commanders, who definitely were not into playoff contention at that point in Week 18, come into Dallas and they embarrassed the Cowboys. And that was how last year ended. And I think that kind of left a bad taste in Dak Prescott's mouth. You come into yesterday's game and after it was 10-7 Commanders at the one point, because at one point it was 10-7 Commanders at one point. I think that this team kind of looked at that and said, oh, hell no, we ain't letting that happen again. And the Cowboys put the foot on the gas, and they did it ever so gratefully as they ended it with a 38-10 victory. And, I don't like to sit up here and give the Cowboys credit and don't want to, float their ego or flex their ego a little bit. But I have to be realistic here and tell you that when I watched this game, that's what I saw. I saw Dak Prescott getting upset at what was happening from last year and wanted to right that wrong, and he did. When you look at the overall outcome of this game, 38-10, Cowboys improved to a 12-5 record. The Commanders fall to 4-13. Dakota Rain Prescott comes in this game, 31 of 36, 279 passing yards with 4 touchdowns. Did throw 1 interception, but he capitalized on that and was able to convert with 4 touchdowns at the end of this game. Sam Howell, 19 of 27, 153 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Now, compared to other performances we've seen from him throughout this year, we've seen worse. That 52 passing yard game we saw not too long ago, that's one of them that I can definitely look back and say that was the worst one. Trying to find the positives from this Commanders side when it came to this Week 18 game is very hard, which you'll see that here when it comes to one of the upcoming segments. I am going to go ahead and announce now while you guys are watching, this is going to be a commercial-free episode. One, because we have the national championship coming up soon. I know you guys want to get to watching that. I do too. But when it comes to this show right here, I'm really just glad to be covering this final game of the season at this point. And I just want to get right down to it and not, we've seen the commercials throughout the entire season, and we'll go back to watch them throughout the other episodes. But because of the national championship tonight and to save time, it will be a commercial-free episode. With that being said, still covering this game from yesterday. You go from the first quarter, it is 7-0 Dallas after first quarter. Okay, for those of you who didn't watch it. Going into the second quarter, it looked like there was a little bit of promise because, Brian Robinson scores on a 1-yard pass from Sam Howell to tie the game up at 7. And then, followed by that, the next possession that they had, they were able to get the 10-7 lead. From that point on, they were up 10-7. From that point forward, they scored 31 unanswered points. Okay. 4 touchdowns and a field goal to handily give the victory to the Cowboys. And besides the Dallas side where you had Dakota Prescott, you had Tony Pollard with 17 carries, 70 yards and 1 touchdown, and CeeDee Lamb, who is still the gem on the wide receiver side for this team, 13 receptions, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns. That was the bright spots of this game yesterday when it comes to the Cowboys side and what decisively gave the victory over to that team. We'll see what we got over here in the comments. There's another man who also is glad that the season's over, a certain @Ryan McCarthy and the beloved New York Jets. When it comes to that statement right there, Sick, I'll give you this. When the season ended for the Commanders yesterday, I kind of gave it a little bit more like this.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Because this team really needs to.
Stop it. Get some help.
And, the Jets are in a lot better situation if Aaron Rodgers comes back healthy. But the Commanders have a lot of work to do this offseason. I'll break down a little bit of what I have in thought for that, towards the rest of this episode here shortly. And so no ads from my end tonight. No, you can bring the ads like in the comments and I'll read them to be funny throughout the show. But as far as our commercials, I love our commercials, but I'm with the national championship going to be on here in about 40 minutes. I'm going to try to wrap everything up before that even starts. So you and others who are watching this now don't have to worry about looking at 2 screens. So just try to look out for everybody. And my man says, all right. So when it comes to this, the game yesterday, it was ugly. It was ugly for someone covering the team. It was ugly for a fan of this team. There's fans out there that probably didn't even watch the game yesterday. But for myself, I just wanted to see it end and look forward to next year because there's positives from this, guys. I mean, there's going to be a leadership change, and we'll get to that here when it comes to this next segment in the Burgundy Flex Review.
Go to my neck, Burgundy Flex. Pour the smoke, we bringing it home. Be like that.
And here in the Burgundy Flex Review, You know, after 4 seasons, it is finally over for this man right here. Riverboat Ron. You know, I didn't make any graphics for the actual different segments that we have like I normally do, just because, like I said, the birthday stuff kind of got in the way, but I did make the thumbnail for the show. The thumbnail for the show is this Riverboat Ron, the last time we will see him with a Washington embroiderment on him. He will not be representing this team anymore. And, you know, even though some people before may have said that.
Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, to the no.
If that's the case, then you have not been watching this team, okay? If you were saying what Bishop Bullwinkle made famous in that song right there, and the hell no to the no, because this team really needs.
Stop it. Get some help.
They really do. And they are going to now with the firing of Ron Rivera as we start this off with the Burgundy Flex review. After 4 seasons, this man is gone. He is finally gone. And I am really, really happy about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to him,
What
is next for him? I don't know. It sure as hell isn't going to be a defensive coordinator job. I tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because after what he displayed by losing 8 consecutive games to end the season, after a Week 9 victory when you finally got it back to a 4-5 record, you are not this.
I am the game. And I am that damn good.
No, you're not. Sorry, it was Cam Newton that helped you get the record that you did over there in Carolina. Now, I don't want to take anything completely away from Ron Rivera as we kind of review his time here with the Washington Commanders. He got hired to be the Washington Redskins coach, okay? And a lot changed shortly thereafter him becoming the head coach of the then Washington Redskins. You go from that to being the Washington football team, okay? We got the pandemic. It affects a lot within the game of football and also in life, okay? He also got sick during this time frame and, you know, had to have a battle with that and overcame it. And on the other side, definitely did a great job with that. My hat's off to Ron Rivera as an individual, as a person. I do not want to throw any shade on this man, okay? He's a good person, a nice person. He does the best he can at his job, but unfortunately, he's more defensive minded, right? And I think, you know, when you put all that in perspective, you know, he kind of tends to favor that side, and that side was definitely, you know, worked on quite a bit over these 4 seasons and did have some flashes in the pan of some greatness here and there. And they did have some great picks with Chase Young and Montez Sweat and others. But then they're gone. Okay? They're gone, and they're gone for a great reason, because at that point you were 3.5 seasons into your head coaching for this team, and you weren't really making any headway with things. So when I put all that together and I think about old Riverboat Ron and his tenure here in the 4 seasons, let's break it down a little bit, shall we, when it comes to Riverboat Ron and his head coaching record for the Washington Commanders as he left. In his first year in 2020, it was the most promising one. 7-9, and they got the first place in the NFC East as the Washington football team that year. Okay. First year with a new name, terrible name, but it's actually better than what we have now. I would have actually preferred if it had been called the Washington Team of Football, so they could be hashtag WTF in their logo. But, you know, that's a different marketing perspective, and we'll come across that another day. But when it comes to that, they go from Washington Team of Football to the Commanders, of course. But in 2020, they were the Washington football team to get first place. And they lost to the future Super Bowl champions that year, and that being the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So you go from that. You have the 2021 season, where that was the first season in which there was 17 games in the season, where we had gone from 16 games the year before, where they were 7-9. You have an extra game now to see if you can improve it to at least 8-9. But no, you actually fall backwards and you go 7-10 in that 2021 season. Then from there, in 2022, You were in third place the year before, third in the NFC East. The next year, you actually improved the record. You go 8-1, but you are in last in the NFC East because at that point, the NFC East was actually improving a little bit. This was the year where in 2022, there was a slight chance for all 4 NFC East teams to make the playoffs because you have 3 wildcard teams now with the reconstructing of the schedule now, with us having 17 games played in the season now, week 18, because everybody has a bye. At this point, you're 4th, but you came very close. That had you been 9-7-1 and the mismanagement of putting in Carson Wentz, we wouldn't have had that situation to where even though you would have still been probably 4th in the NFC East, you still could have probably made the playoffs and we could have seen history, but no, it was mismanagement by putting in Carson Wentz. Now we get to 2023. The one thing I didn't mention with all that, the one thing that you all know that he experienced throughout the 3 out of 4 seasons with this franchise, was that you had undoubtedly the worst owner in NFL history as your owner that brought you in. And at the same time, we all kind of knew all this before you took the job in Washington anyway. That's how desperate you were to extend your head coaching career, and you went to go work with the worst owner of all time. Now here with the worst owner of all time in those 3 seasons, you did actually your best in that moment, and you get the new ownership, okay? We see the purchase by the Josh Harris group led by Magic Johnson. Well, not led by, but he led by him, but I'd say second in command would be Magic Johnson, and then you got the rest of the ownership team there as well. You have a great team built around you, the ownership-wise. This year is an evaluation year. So you're kind of taking a step back and you're watching everything, all the moving pieces that you have around that's already set up in place before you get here. And probably the only one bright spot that you had was the hiring of Eric Bieniemy over the last offseason that I think behind closed doors, I mean, it's not 100% confirmed, but you gotta think about all this. This whole Josh Harris purchase was in discussion as early as the end of last season, but it took a while for it to become 100% permanent. I don't think he was like, at the top of the chain as far as being able to purchase them yet. Like there were still conversations back and forth of who was going to be the actual owner, depending on, finances and the highest bidder and all that stuff, which eventually he came out on the other side. And I think with all that being said, I think that kind of influenced Eric Bieniemy coming in here. You got to look at the head coaching pool that's going to be available this offseason. And the ones that are available are ones that generally failed elsewhere. Okay. I think if you are the Washington Commanders here, which we will talk about this a little bit more in a little bit, you have to give some serious consideration into Eric Bieniemy, and I'll break that down here in another segment that we have here shortly. But after 4 seasons, Ron Rivera is finally out of DC.
Yeah.
You who wanted him to stick around.
Stay off the weed.
Facts, bro. We got Constipated in Sin City in the house saying, "Hey, Playboy, what's shaking?" Appreciate you for tuning in and checking out what we got going on here with this episode of the Commanders Gridiron Report. This edition of the Commanders Gridiron Report is brought to you by Slackjaw VPN, the VPN for slacking off. Slackjaw VPN, where the slacking be smooth. Sick with the great ads. And Screwball VPN, the VPN all the way out of left field. If I had a little bit more energy, I'd make that better. We'll try that again at a later date. I like that one, Sick. That was definitely really good. Now, when it comes to this, again, Riverboat Ronald is out of there. And with that being said, let's go ahead and take this commercial-free episode into the Soldiers of the Week.
Where my soldiers, right side. Commanders, where my soldiers, left side.
And before we go forward, we, in this case, must go a little bit backward to yesterday and break down who I would say would be the top 3 players in this game. And I think we would have to start it off at the top by saying that you got to give it to Dakota Rain Prescott, who led this team and only had 5 incompletions, 31 of 36, 279 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, not only that 1 interception, but hey, you made up for it with the 4 touchdowns and the leadership for your team to get to where you had to go. And the one astonishing thing that I think is great too is the offensive line that he's got there is doing a great job protecting him overall, because he's not scrambling around. And if he is, he's not scrambling around and trying to use his legs to get extra yards, because he didn't have a single rush in this game right here, and hasn't really had to throughout the majority of this season. As you look at the rushing stats, Tony Pollard, Rico Dowdle, CeeDee Lamb, Kevontae Turpin, and Brandon Cooks, some of those wide receivers in there all combined with the running core to get all the running plays in. So for that, I have to give it to Dak Prescott for his leadership, the stats I just rattled off, and the fact that, he kind of made up for last year's Week 18 loss to the Commanders. The second person that I would have to say on this list, I got to give it to Stephon Gilmore for what he's done. And, he's a veteran. He's bounced around, led the defense with 6 tackles in this game yesterday. I could have given it to Donovan Wilson, who had an interception as well, but, and also he had 3 tackles and 2 assists. But I look more at Stephon Gilmore and what he's done in his career. And at this point, Week 18, being healthy and been able to contribute with 6 tackles in this game and playing hard through and through throughout the game. I give it to him as my second pick on the Soldiers of the Week. And then lastly, I would have to say, because I normally do 3 picks for this, and I normally have a graphic for you guys, but for this, I'm just telling you my picks for this week. I'd have to say CeeDee Lamb, 13 receptions, 98 yards, and those 2 touchdowns. I didn't want to see more offensive sided with these picks. I wanted to actually, throw some defense in there, because Stephon Gilmore led the way with that team on that side of the ball. But I also don't want to take away from CeeDee Lamb either. And these picks, as you guys know, throughout the week, it's not like a 1, 2, 3. It's just who I'm rattling off. Like, you can rank them whoever you want, but these are just like my top 3 MVPs of the week. And CeeDee Lamb, you can't take it away from him. He was just short of 100 receiving yards for the game. 13 receptions, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns. And, this guy throughout this season, had nearly 1,800 yards on 135 receptions. Absolutely crushed it. Crushed Michael Irvin's receiving record as far as receptions in this process as well. And those 12 touchdowns that he had throughout the season, he had 2 of those in that game yesterday. And you got to give him credit too. It's hard. It is tough to get over like a 75-yard touchdown. And this guy did a 92-yarder earlier this season as well. So putting all that in perspective, those are my top 3 picks for the Soldiers of the Week. And I don't like to sit on a Commanders show and talk about the Cowboys that way, but in the way that this game unfolded, this is like the second time this season that, or maybe the third time that I've had an entire episode where the Soldiers of the Week were from the other team. And for that, we got a couple comments here in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and acknowledge real quick before we move on. I think that my friend Tim Weisberg and you share birthdays. His was last Thursday. Yeah, mine was yesterday. So, close to the birthdays. You apparently say we look alike, but it's a Capcornisms. I don't know. But yeah, my birthday was yesterday. Just glad to see another one, with everything that I've endured in my lifetime, and glad to be feeling pretty good on this day. So when I put all that in perspective, again, celebrate another day of birth. That was yesterday. Still got some birthday cake left over and some goodies and stuff from all that. So I'm still kind of celebrating as the days go on. I guess I could do that. There's people that celebrate their birthdays for an entire week. There's people that are like, it's my birthday month to celebrate. I think that's a little bit too bougie, but I think a few days for celebrating another annual day of birth is definitely warranted. So after this show, gonna watch National Championship and eat some of that leftover stuff. So talk about that later on. But did Dallas acquire Dalvin Cook? When it comes to Dalvin Cook, he went to the Ravens, I believe. I believe he went to the Ravens. Didn't work out with the Jets. And yes, he went to the Baltimore Ravens. So it didn't work out with the Jets. It was unfortunate what happened there with Aaron Rodgers. I think had Aaron Rodgers been healthy and played throughout the entire season, I think Dalvin Cook's production would have been a little different. Because I think that tipped the scales for a lot of things, even though the Jets overall played pretty well, in my opinion, compared to last season without Aaron Rodgers. And there's definitely some things you could take away from that. So people like Ryan McCarthy out there, you have a lot more promise for next season as long as you can keep Aaron Rodgers upright. However, you need to work on that offensive line because that offensive line was absolutely terrible. And yes, CeeDee Lamb, 135 receptions in a single season, absolutely smashed Michael Irvin's record. And, this team is a team to watch out this playoffs, which we'll talk about it more tomorrow morning on Total Football Talk with Cole Johnson during that 3-hour episode that we have on Tuesdays. Look forward to getting up with my man tomorrow. It is one of my favorite days of the week on Tuesday, talking that. And a couple more comments we got here. I'm tempted to drop a Clearwater laxative ad. Would at Constipated in Sin City have any objections? Well, go ahead and answer that there, Constipated in Sin City. Let him know in the comments. Snowman is here saying, hey, my man is here, and I'm happy that he is here checking this show out.
Yeah.
Guys, we've gone through the first 3 segments in this very rare commercial-free episode because we have the national championship coming up very soon. Let's go ahead and take this into the next segment, and that being the Showstopper.
I off the way that this sound, they turn up as soon as they feed the ground. I am not playing around. I hit them, I bet that they feeling me now.
That being, should Eric Bieniemy's difficulty in relating to Commanders players disqualify him from potential promotion to head coach for the 2024 season? What do you guys think? Do you guys think that should disqualify him from this role? And happy belated birthday, and I wouldn't mind the ad. So yeah, go ahead, Sick. Go ahead and write the ad. I'll read it off because it is hilarious when we get to have these shenanigans in between takes. But looking at this thing right here, at this situation, Eric Bieniemy's difficulty in relating to Commanders players disqualifying him, there's only really 2 players. And that was Cosme and Thomas that spoke out on that. Now, did they have some disgruntled situations throughout the season? Yes. Part of that, there was constant change going on in this organization from July on when the new ownership group took over. You had Eric Bieniemy who's coming in to a dumpster fire that was already spearheaded by dumpster pelicans, okay? Ron Rivera at the top of that chain, who was definitely exposed during those 4 years in Washington, being that Cam Newton carried you to where you were. And we talked about that a little bit more earlier in this show and throughout the entirety of this season in the previous 18 episodes. So I'm not going to spend much time on going back on Ron Rivera because we already gave him his segment earlier. But with Eric Bieniemy, some are saying that he's exposed now for what was to be in Chiefs Kingdom. That being the fact that he had Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and a bunch of other talent like Tyreek Hill with him throughout the majority of his tenure there as the offensive coordinator and assistant head coach. And a lot of teams, well, I wouldn't say a lot of teams, but the teams that were looking for head coaches over this past offseason may have seen the writing on the wall with that. Goes to Washington to try to get an opportunity to help improve this team. I think when it comes to the production of Sam Howell, considering what he had around him, which the only best weapon he had was scary Terry McLaurin. Logan Thomas had flashes in the pan, but the guy's been so banged up over the years. I can't put so much validity to that. I think that I have to look more on the lines of this team had no offensive line, and they spent really no capital this offseason in improving it. And they now have a lot of draft capital coming up into this offseason and a little in some cap space, and they can make some moves and shift this thing around with the right leadership. There's this question that I have right here, and relating to the difficulty in these players. Let's see what you guys have to say before I give my full answer to this. Dalvin Cook made a terrible mistake in leaving Minnesota. Yeah, he wanted too much money. He wanted to, I guess, try to pull a Zeke from his tenure in Dallas, and it didn't quite work out for him. So then he goes to the Jets, and we already know what happened with the Jets there, and then now gets another flash here with the Ravens. Watch him go ball out though with this Ravens team, because this Ravens team is built with this with their formations similar to what Dalvin Cook was doing over there in Minnesota, and they need that help over there. So, and they need to keep Lamar Jackson from having to scramble around as much. So if they can do that and keep Lamar Jackson healthy, I would love, if it worked out, to see the Ravens and the Browns in the AFC Championship. I don't think it will, but it could. I don't know. I haven't really looked so much into the playoff bracket because, again, birthday festivities this weekend, and I was watching football, but I paid attention to this game, the Commanders game, but I got a little bit more digging of some things to go watch and look on before I have the show tomorrow with Cole, so that way I can be a little bit more informative about it. But when it comes to this team right here, Dalvin Cook made the mistake by leaving Minnesota, but I think that he may be able to right a little bit of those wrongs going to Baltimore. But we'll see what type of production he has in his next appearance. If he does get an appearance, who knows? It could be a publicity stunt. Who knows? Too bad Tony Romo wasn't still under center for the Commanders. Yeah, for the Commanders. But, Dak's doing his thing. You got to give him credit where credit's due. Uh-oh. The Showstopper is brought to you by Clearwater Laxative brand new colon cleans. Now available with mud butt protection. When things get muddy, Clearwater is your buddy. Sick Diggy.
Stop it. Get some help.
That was great. that was great. And when you drink that Clearwater Laxative,
Let's get ready to rumble!
that's literally what's going to happen to your insides. Unless he's got a Raheem to help think of a master plan, I think Eric Bieniemy should stay in his position. That's a good point. I'll give him out here shortly. I met Eric B. while in Colorado. He was teammates with the uncrowned Heisman Trophy winner, Mike Pritchard. He lost to Rocket Ishmael. Okay, well, with all that being said, you've met the man. He was teammates, with Mike Pritchard. And he lost to old Rocket Ishmael. That's a great fact. But what do you think when it comes to this man staying with this team as the head coach? I'm asking you. Sick Diggy says, again, unless he's got a Raheem to help think of a master plan, I think Eric Bieniemy should stay in his position. Stay in his assistant head coach position and offensive coordinator. Do you think that he should stay in Washington? And I can't stop. Otherwise, I'll start once again. Who is Washington's top 5 quarterbacks of all time? Well, I'm going to save that for the end because I was going to actually ask you guys a couple questions, and that's a good one to have towards the end. When it comes to Eric Bieniemy, I think I'm siding a little bit more with Sick Dicky here and staying in his position. I think that since Kyle Shanahan has left the Washington Commanders and, well, of course, Sean McVay, in their 10 years as offensive coordinators, that was probably the last time we really had some good structure within the offensive coordinator side. And it came back to this team a little bit this year with Eric Bieniemy, but they need a lot more help. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. You can't fix stupid. Okay. And I'm not saying there's things out there like the people that were stupid, but the way in which this team didn't gel. I was going to say the way in which the momentum shifted for him, but this team just didn't gel with the pieces that they have on it and the leadership that they had at the top. And I think if Eric Bieniemy had some guy who came in there, or gal, you got to look at, both sides when it comes to that. gender equality, give them the right opportunities. But unfortunately, I just don't feel like there's a female right now that's ready to take on a head coaching position in this current day and time in this city, in this time, because of the turmoil that's going around it. There's too much pressure. And not saying it's not putting too much out there, and don't want to be called and labeled certain things. I just don't think it's the right time to be trying that out. Okay. At some point down the road, yes, and deservingly an opportunity. But I think this situation right here, I really don't want Bill Belichick to come in there. My favorite to come to Washington that I would love to see if he does part ways with this team. I'd love to see Mike Tomlin come into this team and be the head coach. And if Eric Bieniemy stays as the assistant and the offensive coordinator, then they can have something cooking over there with this team. Because Mike Tomlin definitely another guy who's well educated on the defensive side, but doesn't shy away from the offense either with what they were able to accomplish with Big Ben Roethlisberger over there in Steel Town. So I would have to say that when it comes to him becoming the head coach of the Commanders, I don't think it's the right move. I think Mike Tomlin would be the best move, but I don't know if that's even going to become a thing because, there's things in the dark being said about Mike Tomlin possibly going to LA. Okay. LA he could be a destination because there was some talk earlier. I was listening to something where apparently his wife really likes LA. Well, I think everybody's wife would like to go to LA. I think it just depends on the situation. I think Mike Tomlin could do some great things if he came to Washington. But there's other opportunities out there from other people, and he's got definitely a lot of things to look at during this offseason. And Washington may not be his number one destination to go to if he has that option at looking into a new head coaching spot. But at the same time, his time in Pittsburgh could be over as well. I mean, they squeaked into the playoffs, but there was a lot of turmoil in that locker room throughout this season. And luckily, he was able to turn it around. But I think that was more so on the coaching and what he was able to do to turn this team around. And I think if they have to look at a new head coach next year, they are not going to make the playoffs. That's my guess right now. But when it comes to this question right now, Conspade in Sin City says, I think he needs more of his own coaches. Okay. When Natural needs a helping hand, try. I don't even know how to say that, but just go ahead and try it. And who is, we'll get, like I said, I'll get back to that. So we'll get back to that here in a little bit. But with the Eric Bieniemy situation, I think it's time that they look elsewhere because they brought in some other people to help them look at this, look at the teams this offseason and see what would be their best pick to maybe make a trade for a coach or pick them up in the, I guess you could say, free agent pool of head coaching. So we'll see. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move this into the next segment. And usually it's about talking about another team, but we do have something to fill it in with, and that being the opponent of the week.
Look how we step, Who we got next? Step on the right, step on the left. Who do we rep?
And here with the opponent of the week, I would have to give it to you in this fashion. Deciding on who stays, the dumpster Pelicans that are overdue to go. Looking at this team right here, man. I want to keep Sam Howell. I really like Sam Howell. And, of course, scary Terry McLaurin. You cannot, unless you're really trying to get draft capital or bring other pieces in replacement, I don't think you get rid of him. He only has 6 receptions for 56 yards in that game yesterday. But overall, in his tenure, in his career, he's got over 5,000 receiving yards in these, 5 seasons that he's been a part of the team. So it's averaging 1,000 yards per season. He barely squeaked over 1,000 yards this year. Got 1,002 yards with 4 touchdowns. Okay, that's unlike Terry because, again, he had 21 touchdowns coming into this season. So it was a down year for him in some aspects, maybe touchdowns wise, but he still hit 1,000 yards to keep that average of 1,000 yards per season going. I don't want to see him go. I think Sam Howell can develop a little bit more and become something special in this NFL. Okay, It may happen with another team, so they may give up on them altogether, and no other team gives them an opportunity. But I think that they would be doing this guy a disservice by doing that. You got to look at his body of work, and when you put him in the right situations with the right leadership, I wouldn't say the right leadership for this team because he only won 5 games between the 1 game last year and the 4 this season. But throughout the first 4 to 6 weeks of this season, it was something kind of special to watch because it looked like it was going to be a promising year. I thought they could have easily finished the year 8-9 or 9-8. Okay, I was putting some promise on this team, and I was wrong with my prediction in that starting this season now. Okay, I own that now. But deciding on who stays and who goes, I think those are your 2 guys that you look at the top of the list: your quarterback and your wide receiver. And I think that you would be wasting a draft pick if you kept that 2nd overall pick and drafted it on these quarterbacks that are coming out of college. I think you could build around Sam Howell. You need to use that capital to either draft like the best offensive lineman of that draft or still make a lot of noise with bringing in the right offensive line pieces because your front on both sides of the ball now needs help because you traded away Chase Young and Montez Sweat. Okay, so now you got to make some adjustments with that because that side of the ball was hurting too. So you got defense and offense in your fronts to do that. If you made the right moves with your offensive line and your defensive line, you could work with a lot of what you have behind it, especially Sam Howell and Terry McLaurin off to the side. Logan Thomas keep his mouth quiet about certain things. I think that you could stay there and still do some things and get back to giving us those flashes in the pan opportunities that he had of looking pretty good back in the day as long as he stays healthy. I think outside of that, you do need to bring in some help on the wide receiver side to help Terry McLaurin, a little bit more than what you brought to help him out right now. But the offensive line, to me, and I've said this for year after year after year after year for a while now, has been one of the negative spots to this team. Since Trent Williams has departed and he's gone to the 49ers, that was the last, along with Brandon Sheriff, the last of the best of what this team has had over the last 15 years. Well, I would say since 2012. So 13, oh no, 11 years. Okay. Looking at that, looking at this situation right here, if you do not address this offensive line this offseason, then you wasted an opportunity to build around Sam Howell while he's still young and has a favorable contract. Why would you go and spend a boatload of money on another free agent quarterback or a draft someone who, may have some promise, but there's very little number 1 overall picks that we've had in recent history, very little of them that have gone on to be like the best ever. Okay. We got Brock Purdy, who just came out not too long ago. He was Mr. Irrelevant. Look what he's doing with the 49ers. He's got a great team built around him, but he's making smart moves. Got other guys out there. I mean, CJ Stroud was picked 2nd, did some great things with the Texans this year. And, RG3 did really well for the, Redskins back in the day before he got hurt. But that team also had a lot of other pieces around him at that point that they don't have now. But the one thing that kind of hurt them too is they had a mediocre offensive line that got him hurt. So they weren't as bad as they are now. Didn't develop into that because they had some good pieces on that line, like Morgan Moses and so on. But looking at it now, you have got to make some changes there. That is where I'm saying you have got to really focus on this offseason. And dependable, loyal employees are extremely important. I don't know who has his back. That's a good point. So if you were to become the head coach, that being Eric Bieniemy, you'd have to deal with all that. Well, the offseason is a long time to reflect and refocus. Yeah. It really is. It really is. You got to look at all this stuff and you got to say, you got to do all that too. Reflect and refocus. We've all been there, man. We've all been there. And I'm going to do that when we finally take a break from this show. here very soon, but I'll talk about here in the final closing thoughts. But this right here, offensive line, defensive line, secondary, another wide receiver, maybe another piece at running back to help Brian Robinson because his production went down this year. You might need a 1-2 punch, kind of like what they had in Dallas with Tony Pollard and Zeke. But, now that they've upgraded that and fixed all that over there in Dallas. So talk about that another time. But when it comes to this, the opponent of the week, the opponent of the offseason, it's probably the best way to put it right now. But for the opponent of the offseason, it is definitely overhauling this team right here. And I look forward to seeing what they come up with. With that being said, let's go ahead and take this into the final segment so we can get ready for the national championship.
We bet on ourselves, so what you expect? A diehard fan never live with regret. Yes, sir.
And here with the final drive. In closing thoughts heading into the start of the Commanders offseason. I'm glad it's here. That's my first thought. I'm glad it's here. I'm glad this season is over. It was a heartbreaking season. Season I didn't think it was going to be as bad as what it was, but I guess it needed to happen to finally close the chapter on the Riverboat Ron head coaching era. Not, maybe for good in the NFL. You may get another opportunity, but the way this thing festered, I would be very surprised if he became a head coach of another team this offseason. He may become a defensive coordinator again, but, he's up there in age. He may decide to finally retire. He's probably got plenty of money, made the right decisions, and he's probably set for retirement. Who knows? He may decide to just take a step back. Who knows? But I wish him the best at whatever he does. I just don't think he's going to be another NFL head coach again. This team right here, I think, has a really good chance of improving their record next year. Hopefully at least 7-10, maybe 6-11. 8-9 or 9-8. I would love to have that. And of course, you want to set that as a goal at this point to have a 9-8 record, to at least have a winning record in the season, because those records will potentially get you into the playoffs. But you want to build. You want to build. You definitely want to build this team. And I said it enough in the past segment. You got to address that offensive line issue. You've got to address that issue. And the next time we have this show, I will talk about it more again. Will this show be on next week is a question that I've actually been asked a couple times since yesterday while having these birthday conversations. My phone was going off all day yesterday, calls and texts. It was definitely great. I definitely appreciate it. One of these questions was coming up. It was like, we know you're going to have the show tomorrow because you got to talk about this week. And of course, more than likely, Riverboat Ron being gone, but we're going to have it the next week. I'm going to play it by ear. If there's enough news that comes out of Washington for this team this week, like Eric Bieniemy, and if there's more cuts and play or whatever, I'll have it. I may put it on the back burner for a few weeks to a month until we get closer to the total offseason for the NFL. And when we actually start seeing the free agency pop off and trades and all that stuff, to where we have more to talk about. Because the only other thing I would be able to do is if I had this show every Monday, I would be able to only talk for 10 or 15 minutes, if that, and then close it. And I wouldn't be able to get through all 6 segments or an adjusted off-season view of the overall production of this show. There's some thoughts I got to put into that, guys. This season was a tough one. There's probably a lot of people that would have quit halfway through this season and said, I'm not going to do this show. Well, I stuck through it like I did when I had a stroke, and I persevered and came back. So when I put all that in perspective, I think about all that. It's like, if I could go through all that, and I've gone through some other bad times, it's not going to be that bad to give 30 minutes to a show every week. And I did that, and I accomplished that. Now, this being episode 19 after the last game of the season. The season's over. Don't have to come back next week. I want to if there's enough news, but I'll post in my stories like Instagram, Snapchat, even though I hate Snapchat, but I still do it anyway for the younger ones. I'll post it there, and I need to start getting better at using X, Twitter, or whatever. I need to work that into the rotation. And and get back on TikTok too. And there's so many different platforms to post stuff and get the word out there on things. And I kind of need to take a step back talking about the Commanders for a little bit. It's kind of depressing. So, and I'll talk about them on Total Football Talk every Tuesday, but an entire hour, 30 minutes to an hour, 30, 45 minutes to an hour on average, talking about this team. It's tough, bro. It really, really is. And I've had a lot going on personally. If you didn't watch the birthday episode yesterday, go back and watch it. Talked about it. It's on the YouTube channel. I kind of just need to take a break, a little bit of a reprieve, and back off. I haven't written an article in a while. I started off this entire game writing articles, and I need to get back into that. Get motivated to do it. And the amount of work that it takes with the backdrop here, like the artwork there for the background and the other overlays and the graphics, it's a lot. It takes time. And even though I've got templates for stuff that I've built and have worked on it all took time. It's all stuff that it is invested. And just like this team here needs to invest more time into making changes to the overhaul of this roster to make it a better team. And sometimes I got to take a step back and work on some other things that are part of the preparation for this show in order to make it better. And I have the same drive and thoughts when it comes to my brand and Sartoba Media, as well as helping the other brands that are showcasing us right now, like Team MBS Media, and whatever I can do for them, which is writing articles. Just need to get back and doing that. And, having discussions soon with, the guys over A7BN Sports to the same thing and figuring some things out. Got my hand in a lot of jars right now, and I need to consolidate some things. And, along with a full-time career, which I like, developing in as well, I've been doing a very good job of nothing overlapping and getting in the way of it. And I got to continue that. And part of that is sometimes you got to take a little bit of a break and a little bit of a reprieve from doing certain things. That's why they have seasons of shows. And even though this show will be back on Mondays when it comes back, and it may not even be that long of a break, I think during the offseason, we're not going to have weekly episodes. Where during the season, and of course, leading up to it next year, I'll probably start a little bit earlier because I started this like the week before the season started. Probably, do it throughout preseason, talk about some of the people that we could see, being promoted to the 53-man roster. And we could talk about that then. So, but episode 20, I don't know when it will be back. I doubt it will be next week. I don't think it's going to be next week. I think it will be a couple weeks from now, a few weeks now, at most a month, when the season's finally over and we have a little bit more news to talk about. When playoffs is gone, I think that's when we'll be back. But at this point, 19 episodes are in the books. We got a couple comments here in the chat. So before I do that, before I go with the most recent comments, I want to say that there were some questions in here that I got to answer. And there's one of them that Constipated Sin City asked me earlier. And this one, I actually have been thinking in the back of my mind throughout the entirety of this episode since he put this comment in the chat. And I'm trying to find it actually right now so that way I can acknowledge it. Like, I know you're sitting over there. You know what I'm talking about.
Acknowledge me.
And I'm trying to. I'm really trying to. But I'm trying to see where this comment was at. Top 5. I'm pretty sure you asked me the top 5 quarterbacks of all time. So I've been thinking about that ever since you asked it. Yeah, here it is. All right, here we go. It's yeah, I'm sorry. So, who is the Washington's top 5 quarterbacks of all time? I think I'm going to start this off at 5 and work my way up. Okay. I think I'm going to have to go with number 5. I think I'm going to have to go with Billy Kilmer. He wasn't the flashiest quarterback, nor did he post great numbers, but, the dude knew how to win. And, being a part of those late 60s, early 70s teams, you got to give the credit to old Billy Kilmer. I would say 4. This is tough, man. 4, I'd have to put Mark Rippon up there. Even though he had, he had that one season where he broke out. He still set records. Still, it was his best season to date, and they won a Super Bowl on top of it in 91. That was the last time, 32 years ago in January of 92, coming off that 91 season in the playoffs, winning that Super Bowl. I got to give it to Mark Rippon at number 4. For number 3, I'd have to say Sonny Jurgensen, for bouncing around earlier on and then finding a home there in Washington and doing what he did throughout the 60s. I got to give it to old Sonny. No, he didn't win a Super Bowl, but he was part of, them accomplishing their first trip to the Super Bowl, part of the leadership and setting the tone for this team. I got to give it to Sonny Jurgensen. Number 2, I believe, would be number 1 had he stayed healthier and would have been a part of that second Super Bowl, and that being Joe Theismann. I have to give it to old Joe Theismann. I have to give it to Joe Theismann here because he led them to their first Super Bowl and won. He led them to their first 2 Super Bowls. He lost the other one to the Raiders. But I would have to say that because of that, he would have been a part of that third Super Bowl appearance and won because he got hurt in 86. And they won the following season, I believe, with Doug Williams and Jay Schrader, the whole back and forth BS. And finally, Doug Williams, owned that role long enough to lead the team to the Super Bowl that season. I'd have to say my number 2 would be Terry McLaurin. Not Terry McLaurin, Joe Theismann. I don't know where Terry McLaurin came from. So far, I got Billy Kilmer at 5, Mark Rippon at 4, Sonny Jurgensen at 3, Joe Theismann at 2, and this next person. Those of you who have not been a historian of football probably aren't going to know who the hell I'm talking about, but I'd have to say Sammy Baugh would have to be the number 1 quarterback in this franchise's history. And the reason why I say that is because, back from 37 to 52, and that being 1937 to 1952, which none of us were alive then who were watching this show, more than likely. Unless you're Mickey Delaney, then you probably were. But, other than that, I would have to say Sammy Baugh, 1937 to 1952, again, was this team's leader. And within his first 5 seasons in the league, led them to 2 NFL championships. It was before there was a Super Bowl, before the NFL-AFL merger. It was a lot less teams in the league, but, they were part of being the best teams in the league at that point from the 30s to 40s, well, at least the late 30s to early 40s. And that being 1937 and 1942, when you look at this what he accomplished. He won 2 NFL championships in his first 5 seasons, okay? That's why I'm saying, even though Joe Theismann led them to 2 Super Bowl appearances when the league was bigger, a little bit harder to get to the championship game, he still didn't win. Sammy Baugh won 2 NFL championships and has that distinct honor. And I feel bad for Joe Theismann because had he stayed on top and not gotten hurt, I think the next few seasons, they not only would have won another Super Bowl, they could very well potentially have won 2 more Super Bowls if Joe Theismann would have stayed healthy. They could have potentially gone to back-to-back Super Bowls again and beat the Denver Broncos again. So, hey, who knows? We'll talk about that more at another time, but I like that question right there, Constipated in Sin City. Definitely a great question right there. Sick Diggy throws one in here, too, that I want to acknowledge real quick. My question is, who will take the position of defensive coordinator? And can that person work well with Eric Bieniemy as offensive coordinator? I don't think that Eric Bieniemy has an issue with working with the staff, okay? Because if that was the case, I don't think Andy Reid would have, signed the stamp of approval with having him over there in Kansas City, and they wouldn't have won 2 Super Bowls, okay? I don't think it's him and a problem with working with the staff. I just think that whoever these guys that are complaining are snowflakes, and they can't take constructive criticism. the older we get out here, and the more generations of the more younger generations develop and get older, we're seeing more and more snowflakes out here. You could say it started with my generation, but millennials, we got some out there. We could argue that, at another date. But I think it's just the differences in opinion between the player personnel and the players themselves. Okay. So putting all that in perspective, that's a good question right there, Sick, but that's more something we can talk about during these off-season episodes if you want. Hey, Drew, wave on my channel. I have a 140 video with 3 UFOs sitting above Las Vegas, and I pan towards a helicopter to show the difference. You know what? I'll check that out. I definitely think I will check that out. Let me watch the national championship here in a few minutes, and after that, I'll make a note of that. I kind of want to check that out. It's a good throw out there, even though it was a shameless plug in some aspects. It's a good one because I'm gonna go check it out. But guys, this is it for the regular season discussion of this team. It is finally over.
Yeah.
And the transitions of this on a weekly basis. I had the birthday episode last night and had the New Year's edition, but the regular season episodes for that are now on ice for right now, but just for a little bit of time. That may be back before the Commanders Gridiron Report comes back. Who knows? But got some other things got to work on outside of this media stream stuff in preparation of it, for one, but also just some other things. Got to take a step back. And we got some other great content that's going on regularly for the channel as well. So stay tuned to that. Also stay tuned to A7BN Sports over there on the side, on their YouTube, not YouTube, but Facebook page, as well as Team MBS Media up there. I'm trying to point to it right. That you could be seeing this show on the YouTube channel right now. There's other great content that these collaborative teams are doing as well with what they do within their work, and as well as myself. We're not just solely fixed to one thing, like the Commanders here for myself. Multiversed when it comes to all NFL teams, which is why I love talking football with Cole every Tuesday morning for 3 hours, and we got a lot to unwind tomorrow and give you a preview of what the playoff is going to look like. So with all that being said, guys, we've only got one more thing left to do to end this season on one great note.
Acknowledge me.
Not that. We have to look at one badass outro. Everyone, as always, thank you for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe to all of our platforms. And as always, stay safe out here in these streets.
Who do we rep? Commanders, where my soldiers? Right side. Commanders, where my soldiers? Left side. Commanders, where my soldiers? Watch the middle. Commanders, where my soldiers? Now we step. Where my soldiers? Right side. Who do we rep? Where my soldiers? Left side. Now we step. Where my soldiers? Watch the middle. Command we red, where my soldiers can't play. Hit 'em.
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
You ain't got to go home, but you got to get on up out of here, just like Ron Rivera got on up out of FedEx Field in a hurry. Please, as always, guys, like, share, and subscribe to this content. And most importantly, stay safe out here in these streets.